Hi, welcome to Sweet 16 Sunday. I'm Paula Storm, and today I've got some really exciting news to share with you. If you're a fan of Sweet 16, you may notice that the screen has had an upgrade. Really exciting. There's lots of new features that I'm going to tell you about today. Let's take a look at the basics first. So we've got the pedal button up the top here. So that's basically the same as the old screen. So if your pedal is plugged in properly, it will say pedal. If it's not plugged in properly, it will say check pedal. So that's just a little guide to help you know whether your pedal is plugged in properly. In the middle, we've got the red light there. That will turn pink it will turn green when you start stitching, and it'll go back to the red or pink when you stop stitching. We've got our speed over here. So that'll change depending on how fast you're pushing your pedal. That will change as you're stitching. That speed button is also used for another really new and exciting feature that I'll tell you about in more detail shortly. Over here we've also got the normal buttons, the needle stop buttons. So if you like to have the needle stay in the down position when you're stitching, you want the little circle there to be highlighted. If you want your needle to be in the up position every time you stop, you will just press. See how the highlight there has changed? So I want my needles to stop in the down position every time I stitch. So I want it to hold my piece securely, so I leave that highlighted on down. In the middle of the screen here, we've got the needle up, needle down button. So for example, if you like to manually, or when you start stitching, you want to pull up your threads, you can use that button. You can push the button and the needle will go down into your piece. If you press it again, it will come up out of the piece. So that's that button there. We've also got our speeds. This is a really good upgrade from the last screen because you don't have to go into a different screen to change your preferences. So for example, if you like to stitch on say 45% instead of 35%, we'll go to 35% there. Then we can adjust the speed up to 45, and then we can just press that little save button. And that's saved my little hotkey there now to 45%. So that now I can switch to 50%, go back to 12, or go to 45. My favourite speed is usually about 35%, so I'm just going to go back to 35 and save it. And my hotkey's back to my preference, which is 35%. We've got one more button here that I'm going to go into very shortly, but that's my favourite new feature on the new screen of the Sweet 16. But right now I'm going to go into the More menu. Now there's another really exciting feature here. It's the low bobbin alarm. Now I'm going to do a whole new video on that screen shortly, so subscribe to my channel and you'll find out more about that feature very soon. We've also got the options button, which is the same as your old screen. So you've got your volume adjuster. So if you don't want to hear the buttons make a noise, you can just press that button or turn your volume back up. With your brightness, you can turn it off altogether, or you can turn it back on, or you can adjust how bright you want your screen to be. So you can see you can adjust that there. So that's the brightness and the volume. Let's go back now to some of the other options. We've got the system info. Now you'd really only use that if you need some help and you're speaking to someone from Handi Quilter. They need information. That's where you'll find the information for them, but they'll tell you where to look. This also it's a bit cute to work out how many stitches your machine has taken over its lifetime, but also if you want to keep track of how many stitches you've used on a particular project, so maybe good for customer quilts, you can reset that timer there to 0 every time you start a new project. So that's a really cute feature as well. You've got your language selector down here. We've got our timers up here, which is great for, again, if you're keeping track of a customer quilt, then you can use that in that menu. We've also got the calculator here, which is really good. For example, you're trying to work out how much thread you need, or again, you're keeping track of costs of a customer quilt, then your calculator there will do that for you. Also, we've got the diagnostics menu. Again, you would really only use that if you're speaking to someone from Handi Quilter and they ask you to check that screen. So let's go back now to our main screen and talk about this little guy here. So this is my favourite new feature on the new screen of the HQ Sweet 16. This is the basting function. So if you need to baste a quilt, this is the button you use for that. So you can see here, we've got, once that turns pink, that means I'm working in the delay feature, which is what we use for basting, or the basting mode. You can adjust the amount of delay. See up here, it's changed to ½ a second. You can change your delay up to 2 seconds and those increments in between. So I'm going to show you all about basting a quilt right now on the brand new screen of the HQ Sweet 16. Okay, so with the new basting feature, I'm going to set my machine on half speed so you can see what's going to happen. I've just got a sandwich here, which is my 3 layers. I've got my backing fabric, some batting, and my top fabric. I've just traced out my daughter's name here because I'm going to turn this into a placemat. So to start with, I'm going to start in the middle. Now I haven't done any pinning or anything, and I probably should have ironed my fabric first, but I've just layered my 3 layers together and I'm going to start in the middle. Now as usual, I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up. So I take my needle down, needle straight back up, and I'm going to pull out my bobbin thread. And then I'm going to go back to where I started. I've switched over to my open toe foot, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. And now I've got my machine set on the delay, so the way I showed you just a minute ago. I'm going to set it onto half speed, and what I'm going to do is put my foot flat to the floor and just start pushing my fabric. And so the machine's going to take a stitch every ½ a second, and you'll see now. See how it's just delaying? And so by pushing my hands at this speed, I'm getting a stitch that's about every ¼ of an inch. Okay, so that's on half speed. I'm going to adjust now up to 3/4 of a second, and you'll notice that as I'm pushing my hands at the same speed, I'm getting a slightly bigger stitch. I'm going to adjust again up to 1 second. And see how my stitches are quite a bit bigger? They're almost about, almost an inch, I would say. And depending on how fast, of course, I'm pushing my hand, that will determine how small the stitches are. If I go up to 1½ seconds, the stitch is going to be really quite big. And again, 2 seconds. Oops. 2 seconds is really not working for me. As you can see, it's kind of pulling everything apart. So I'm going to go back down to my favourite, which is every 3/4 of a second, and I'm going to move my hands quite quickly so I get a nice even basting stitch. These stitches are about every ½ inch or so. I'm going to stop and adjust my hands. And by using this feature, I can baste my quilt together. This is a fairly small piece, as you can see, but you can baste even a large quilt. Maybe you like to use a basting spray. Well, this is a really good way to make sure that you don't get any puckers on the back. So you would baste your quilt together with your basting spray, and then just run some stitches maybe through the middle in a sort of crosshatch sort of direction. And you know that you're not going to get any puckers on the back of your piece. So again, this is at 3/4 of a second, the delay. If I adjust that to 2 seconds, they'll be really quite big stitches, or if I drop it down to every ½ a second, they'll be quite small stitches. But for me, about every 3/4 of a second is my preference. I've got my foot flat to the floor, so you can tell the stitches are delayed enough for me to get these nice basting stitches. And then I can really easily go in with a pair of scissors, snip out the basting stitches on a particular section that I'm working on, and start quilting. So I'm going to finish basting this and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've finished basting my piece and I'm ready to start quilting. I've already started taking out some of my basting threads, and I just wanted to show you how I do that. So first of all, I'm just going to snip into one of these threads here. This is a bit hard to do with big gigantic scissors, but I'm just going to snip those threads and then just start pulling out those threads like that. You can use an unpicker, you can use your fingernails. whatever's handy. And there we go. So once that's done, we've cut our top thread. We need to cut the bobbin. What you can do is just give that a gentle pull and you'll see the bobbin start to come up. If you've got little scissors, this is much easier to do, but you can just snip that bobbin thread and give it a tug, and you can see I've then pulled up that bobbin thread. I'll do the same thing at the other end. I'll just give it a tug and that bobbin thread will come up. So you can keep track of all of your stitches, both your top threads and your bobbin threads. You know you're not going to stitch through them, and you can start stitching. So there you go, that's the new basting feature on the HQ Sweet 16.